Hello, welcome to this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
Be the loudest, most ravenous, craziest, energetic environment that we've had in Michigan Stadium ever. That's what we want it to be. The loudest place it's ever been. I don't know what the decimals have been or what they could be, but we need them to reach peak on Saturday.
And it's the game that all Michigan fans look forward to all year long. We've already heard from Sharon Moore extorting the fans, and now we're going to hear Marlon Klein basically just tell us how it is.
Anybody that says that this is just another game is crazy, because it's not. This is the game, and that's, for a reason. I can't really tell you what it feels like. I can't really, tell you the emotions that I have when I go out there for a game like that, especially for that game. But and you can't really talk about it. You got to be in it and you got to experience it. So and that's what I'm gonna be, telling the freshmen. And that's what's my message for all these younger guys that haven't been out there and haven't experienced those feelings yet. But they will on Saturday, and I'm super excited for those guys to really, live in that moment and really experience the greatest rivalry in college sports.
But first, let's go over the Maryland game. Well, Clint, what'd you think about that one?
Well, my top line takeaway from the Maryland game was a sense of relief. I think from a game profile standpoint, the Maryland game was very similar to the game before at Northwestern. Both on the road, both teams overall ranked, right in the middle of the pack in the 60s in SP plus. Better defensive numbers than offensive numbers. Not very intimidating venues to visit. A lot of Michigan fans made both trips. So I thought that the games on paper going in were very similar. It was a near debacle at Wrigley against Northwestern. And to turn it around in a week, go to College Park, and to execute pretty cleanly on offense and defense and really dominate the game, put it away early. The whole fourth quarter was considered garbage time in the numbers. So I was relieved to see that they could turn it around after the Northwestern game. So that was the top line takeaway for the whole team. Specifically, I think Bryce really showed more poise, more confidence in the pocket. Clearly, during the bye week, they worked on having him calm his feet down a little bit and worked on timing and throwing the ball in rhythm. And it's starting to show in these last two games. He started out really hot against Northwestern. He had another great performance from wire to wire against Maryland, eliminated the turnovers. And that obviously is great to see as well. So for me, it was about relief and seeing that they've identified their biggest gaps coming out of those poor performances against maybe Purdue and Northwestern and things that were making us grind our teeth. Seems like they found a spot that they could clean those things up and definitely looked better against Maryland.
Yes, definitely a great performance versus Maryland. And I'll tell you, what I loved is, as you mentioned, Bryce Underwood calmed the happy feet. Sharon Moore has said, over the last couple of weeks that
Not a freshman anymore. I think. You got to stay positive within those situations. Never played quarterback. Been around some really good ones and seen it, and you got to coach them a little bit different than you do the O-line than the other positions in the defense. So he just no, that's you, TJ. I just feel very strongly about his resiliency and how he plays and his no flinch mentality. And for a young guy, it's pretty special. He's got to not throw this, not throw that, but like you look at the ones he made, there's some dynamic plays in there, and just continue to take out those other ones, and we'll help them do that as a staff and put our arms around and make sure we do that as a group.
You definitely could see that. I mean, I think that he came out in the Northwestern game in that first half and kind of just took over the offense. It was Bryce all the time, and as you said, basically escaped what could have been a disaster with, a very competent last drive that put Michigan in field position for the field goal. So it was really great to see Bryce. And I'll tell you, the thing that I really appreciated in this game versus Maryland was with Jordan Marshall being out, if there's any game that you could have expected perhaps the offense to go pass happy like we saw in the first half versus Northwestern, it was this game. But when you look at the stats, basically you ended up with 228 yards on rushing and 215 yards passing. So, they talk a lot about complementary football, and there are different aspects to complementary. You can say the offense needs to do its part, the defense needs to do its part, and special teams, we've been very critical of special teams, but it's also basically having complementary attacks on offense. And I was really excited to see this, basically down to our third string running back. And it's just when we compare to the offense that we had last season, that was just completely anemic and struggling in every aspect, to have the offense surging the way it has, and to be basically down to, versus Maryland, our third string running back, and still have the balance between passing and rushing. Really just an amazing, amazing thing to see. When you look at the way the scoring broke out, they traded touchdowns in the first quarter. Michigan had 2 touchdowns to Maryland's field goal, headed into the half at 21-10. And then Michigan just took over. 2 touchdowns in the third quarter to Maryland's field goal, a touchdown and a field goal in the fourth quarter. Maryland answered with a touchdown for a score of 45-20. Just a dominating performance and a true balance. And just I really have to tip my hat to the running backs and the way that the team has been prepared. And Tony Alford has really prepared these guys. Just next man up. There's no drop off.
Yeah, absolutely. In to kind of quantify the balance, there were 44% run plays and 56% pass plays. Very balanced. Success rate, 58% for run plays, 60% success on pass plays, 4.6 yards per run and 7.7 yards per pass play. So really, really great balance. And when Bryce Underwood is executing well, Chip Lindsey has a lot more options available to him, right? There are pages available in the playbook when Bryce is standing in there and throwing with confidence that really make the whole offense better. But your comment there about the depth of the running back room, absolutely 100% true. But we have to really tip our cap as well to the offensive line, to Grant Newsome and Juan Castillo, the coaching staff kind of leading the offensive line. Because I'll tell you, I was not overly impressed with the execution of the offensive line back when we were talking about the second quarter of the season. The games 4 through 6, I was still frustrated with some execution problems that were evident. And I really, really am now impressed with the turnaround from that point. I don't think this line is quite as good as those Joe Moore award-winning lines from 21 and 22. They're probably a step behind that 2023 line, but certainly they are head and shoulders better than last year's offensive line as well.
For them, for what they've done, I'm very proud of the fight, the physicality that they continue to have. Proud of Grant Newsome and that O-line staff and what they've done. It's always never perfect, but those guys are putting up a great fight and putting us in great position to win games.
And I do think that they're good enough to be able to run the ball against the best defenses in the country, and that's obviously huge going into the game. So huge hat tip to Grant Newsome, to Juan Castillo, and to those offensive linemen. 7 or 8 guys this season have gotten really significant snaps in their rotation and filling in with one another for injuries. So the offensive line is really, really in good shape. A lot of young talent coming in the future, and I'm very, very happy and a little bit relieved to see that Grant Newsome and Juan Castillo have figured out how to turn it around up front.
Well, Clint, I have to not only agree with you, but be happily shocked at the turnaround. We had spoke in earlier podcasts about really being concerned about the job that Grant Newsome was doing, okay? And as much as I like him and wish his success, the offensive line struggled so much this season that I had wondered, what the future of that coaching position was going to be. Okay, to be quite frank, and to see the turnaround, not only is it great for the team, but it's great for the coaching staff. It's a real, I think, an acknowledgement that Sharon has had faith in Grant, and we're seeing that confidence, pay dividends. So again, it's one thing to have great running backs, but it's really hard to run if you don't have a great offensive line. And where this offensive line has improved just in the last month or so. I mean, I didn't know how this was going to go, right? Especially when you have 3 redshirt freshmen in there. You don't know how quickly they're going to be able to gel. And honestly, there are times they've looked amazing the last couple weeks. So definitely a tip of the hat and something that bodes well heading into the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to give credit also to the leaders in the locker room. Just like, we kind of, from a leadership standpoint, we kind of operate that way from top down, talking about the program and then the coaches and then the position coaches. But it's still the players that are at the front of the line when they're doing those individual sessions. So guys like Greg Crippen and Gio El Hadi, identifying their own strengths and weaknesses, working to close the gaps that we saw, and then really, really improving and being better blockers out in space, getting to the second level. Those guys are really leading the charge, and their turnaround has really facilitated the turnaround for the rest of the unit. So great job to those 2 guys, especially a captain like Gio El Hadi.
Yeah, and to be fair to Gio, I had criticized some of his performances earlier in the year. I think it's a combination of, I think he was a little more dinged up than than the coaches would like to acknowledge. I know in some early season games saw him getting some extra work, and it was the extra work to make sure he could go, right? And I think as a captain, there was no way they were going to take him off the field unless absolutely necessary. And you really got to tip your hat and acknowledge the work that he's done as a captain and somebody who's been around the program for a long time. Sharon talks about that. Seems like he's been, between when he started recruiting him and coaching him, that he's known him forever. So it's good to see a captain coming into his own and being able to finish out his senior or his last season, so well.
100%. And defensively, I think it's a similar story. We had some surprise absences. Ernest Hausman didn't make the trip to College Park, but we got Cole Sullivan back at linebacker. Jayshawn Barham was able to move back up to the edge position, and the defensive line kept rotating. It's clear. It's the philosophy of this defense to keep those guys fresh, especially early in the game. And we're seeing young guys and depth guys that are further down the depth chart rotating in early in the game. And hopefully this is the part of the season where that pays off. So certainly very, very impressed with the way that they executed on defense. I think there were a couple times that Maryland's freshman quarterback kind of got tricked with his eyeballs, where it looked like one particular coverage, like man coverage, and they were able to actually switch to zone and disguise that enough that the quarterback kind of held it too long, and we ended up with some big sacks down while Maryland was in the red zone that ended up turning potential touchdowns into long field goal attempts. So again, I think the defense, similar to last year, after some major question marks in the middle of the season, seems like maybe they found some rhythm, found some combinations that work. I think Wink is figuring out which calls, which fronts and coverages combinations are working out better than others. And, again, it feels like, for what they can control, it feels like Michigan is playing the best that they've played this season consistently, at least, from what we saw in the Maryland game.
Absolutely. Another player who did not make the trip was Samaj Morgan. And, Clint, we've talked a lot about this on previous podcasts. I like Samaj. Everyone on the team talks about his work ethic and how he's trying to work through to get through whatever mental block that he has going on, right? Because we know he's a talented athlete. So when they said that he didn't make the trip, they said it was due to injury. I wonder if it was just a chance to take a day off, which honestly, I think that might have been a good idea. Really pulling for him to come back and be successful. I don't think we're going to see him returning kicks, and that's okay. But I do, I'm pulling for him. Okay, I would like nothing better than Samaj to have some big plays to kind of clean the slate and reset everyone's thoughts of him right now. Because again, pulling for him, but we have to acknowledge that he wasn't there at the game. So interesting that when we look at it from a statistics standpoint, again, another Michigan running back over 100 yards, right at 100 yards. So that's great to see with Bryson Kudzil. And again, we see Marsh just dominating at the wide receiver position. 5 receptions for 76 yards. Another big thing that I want to point out, and which we have talked about, is so Marlon Klein, 3 for 37 yards, right? But that tight end position is so important to the Michigan offense. And I think the tight ends being dinged up pretty much all season long with different guys having to step up, I think with Marsh and McCulley kind of settling in as option 1 and option 2, medium and deep, I think you see Marlon Klein basically giving Bryce another option. I really feel that we're finally seeing the Michigan offense that Sharon Moore envisioned at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. I think that the injuries at the tight end position have limited what is possible, but it's also it's about the quarterback's ability to see and read what he is seeing over the middle, especially, right? Because that's where there's a lot of danger in the middle of the field. So when defenses are playing particular coverages, especially cover 2 or split safety coverages, the middle of the field is where you have to attack. And when you have a quarterback that has his eyeballs are coming down, looking at the rush and looking to escape a little bit early, obviously he's not processing and reading those coverages. So now as he is settling in, he's starting to see where Michigan can attack over the middle, how he can read some of those players on RPOs. And it is definitely a level up in ability. And the ceiling has risen in the last 3 weeks or so on this offense, likely, like I said, from the work they put in the bye week, just to make Bryce more comfortable and confident with his feet so that he can use his talent and his processing ability to fit the ball into some windows over the middle. So definitely means that the tight ends become more important in the passing game, as well as pushing the ball down the field and letting guys like McCulley and Channing Goodwin and even Marsh kind of get free underneath over the middle.
Absolutely. Now, it wasn't all good news. Again, Dominic Savada missed what last year would have been an automatic field goal for him. Again, ended with a nice 46-yard field goal in the fourth quarter to kind of get things back. But again, special teams this year, hopefully by bringing Marsh in to do returns, we've kind of fixed that. The return game is not going to continue to be a huge issue, but I still have some pretty serious questions about if this game is going to come down to a field goal. But we will just take that as it comes. And when we talk about Bryce, okay, you talk about that middle zone, with him being able to attack that as high opportunity, high risk. One of the questions that I've had all year, again, Bryce, an amazingly talented athlete, no doubt, but he does always have the zip on the ball at level 10, right? Which is a real problem when you're throwing to that middle area because you're throwing shorter passes. He seems to throw a flatter ball, and when you have zip at level 10, you seem to get deflections more, shall we say. So, Clint, in the last two games, when you look at Bryce's game, do you feel like he's been able to adjust his velocity and provide more touch on the ball, or is that still something that he needs to work on?
I think both things are true. I do think that he's improved in the last 3 or 4 games, being able to take some, not always throwing the fastball or what Tom Brady would call the one ball, kind of a straight shot with some zip on it. He's always been able to do it. He was doing it early in the season, but there were times that he should have done it that he did not. And that is what has improved. There are times that he has to put a little bit more touch on the ball and he hasn't, but those examples are decreasing since the beginning of the season. So there's still room for improvement, but I think he is getting better on when he needs to take a little bit off of the ball, whether it's getting it over a defender, and getting it down in front of a deeper defender. Like that's the biggest example where you need to put a little bit of touch on the ball, but also on the shorter passes, especially underneath and over the middle, you're kind of throwing into a window, right? So when you're playing with your friends and there's no lineman, you're just kind of leading the receiver, just like everybody would think. But once you've got linemen and pass rushes and you've got protection schemes sliding one way or the other, there's a lane that you can throw the ball through. And you have to know how fast to throw the ball through that lane that is going to lead your receiver, 5 or 10 yards down the field, right? It's a different kind of I don't want to say calculation because you're not running numbers in your head, but there is a different, concept there where I'm throwing it through this lane and I've got to throw it hard so it gets there on time. Or I'm throwing it through this lane and the receiver is not even there yet. I need to take a little bit off of it to give the receiver some time to get there, right? So sometimes velocity is also related not just to who's catching the ball and where they are, but what passing lane are you trying to throw it into? And the opposite is true too. With those tight windows with defenders really close on both sides, you've got to be able to dial it up just to get it through that window. And then the receiver's got to make a catch on the other side. So all in all, Bryce is really, really, he's right at the point that he should be for an 18-year-old freshman quarterback. I think he started out way above my expectations, kind of leveled out through the middle of the season, where my expectation would have been that he was going to make some big jumps. And now we're through 11 games, and he's right where I would have hoped that he would be. He got here on a different pathway, but still, I think he's right where he would expect to be and right where I had hoped that he would be as well. So now it's about, going out there and making plays in the greatest football game of the whole year, college or pro. This is the one that everybody really, really cares about. So now, I'm excited to see what he can do on this stage.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the game, Clint. Let's talk about that. And we've talked about Bryce all season long. And if there's one thing that I haven't seen, if there's one thing that I'm just hoping that Sharon has just been holding back on, and that every time Bryce goes out to play, especially this last month where he's been feeling it, right? You can see it. You can see it in his eyes. You can see it when you talk to him, that a confidence and a light has just come on, right? We talk about when the experience and the talent start to sync up, and the experience meter has come up in the last month, and he has come into his own as a very, very talented quarterback who understands his tools and understands how to deploy them. But if there's one thing I hope they're holding in the bag, it's the really long pass. Okay. And, you know, I look at how good he's been in the passing game, and I keep waiting for, well, where's the 50 or 60 yard play? And I'm wondering if that's one of the things that they have that they're holding back for Ohio State.
Definitely possible. I don't know. I don't have a really great guess or projection on that.
Well,
And
Clint, every week when Sharon comes out to talk to the press, right, he brings his
mhm,
iPad and he has, he always jokes that there's things on there he won't share with us. So I'm not
hmm,
surprised that he's not sharing his game plan with you or I, but I always laugh when he does that. If at the very bottom of, we checked all these things. Oh wait, but we didn't run that really long play. So I know that we don't know, but I always laugh because he plays this game back and forth. It's like, would you guys like to see this? Oh, I'm not going to show it to you, right? But I wonder if on their checklist of things that they want to demonstrate and practice and show, if at the bottom of that iPad it says, oh yeah, we got this 60 or 70 yard play that we've been watching Ohio State, and we're just holding that. So I know that it's a hope, but it's one of the things that when we're at the game, and if they do hit that, Clint, there are things that you bang on the team on, right? Like, I know if there's a punt and it's not caught in the air, you are going to say, listen, catch that thing in the air, and you're going to give all the stats on how it impacts the game and how much it can help you. And it's one of those deeper level understandings of the game that we talk about in these podcasts. And I know consistently, right? Like, when they catch the punt in the air, you got a smile on your face, right? If when they do just that little thing that we would expect of any junior high or high school team, okay, and Clint, do you want to give the yard difference? Because I know you have it. I know you're thinking about it even now.
it typically costs you about 20 yards in field position if you let the ball bounce.
All right. And I know you know that because I know that because every game when it happens, you tell me as it goes up or down, right? Okay. You are remarkably consistent. So when we're at the game and Andrew Marsh catches that ball on a punt, and you're going to have a smile and you're going to say, you know what? That's a 20 yard, plus or minus, if you do that correctly. Now, one thing that I will be excited about is when in the game, Sharon Moore and Chip Lindsey pull out the 60 or 70 yard downfield pass, okay, with McCulley and Marsh running deep posts, okay, and they hit them. I will go nuts, okay? So just
Hmm.
know I'm preparing you to be ready for that, because if it happens, and I will dare say when it happens, I will break decorum in the press box and shriek very loudly, okay? I will pound that table because I have been, since last spring game when we saw Bryce come out, and there were at least two times where he just flippin' launched the ball, okay? And I remember our photographer saying, man, you would not believe it. He threw that ball 70 yards and it just bounced off the wall in the end zone. It had a zip, right? I have been waiting for it to happen. I have been waiting to see it, and I am manifesting it that's going to happen in the game. So I just want to warn you that as much as I do my best to follow decorum, okay, and pretend that I'm not deeply invested in the game like we're supposed to pretend to do as fan media, right? I will let you know that I will shriek when that happens. So I just want to prepare you.
Yeah, I get it for sure. And like I said, I don't have a good read on what they've been holding back. Right, I've tried to guess that all through the Harbaugh era, and I never had a good read for it. So we'll see. If I were to if I were to mention projection, or what I think they may have held in their back pocket for the Ohio State game, it would be more quarterback run, where they've worked on it, they've practiced it, but they didn't want to use it all season because if Bryce were to go down, they'd be in a world of hurt offensively. So now you've gotten to the end of the season, you've gotten to the biggest game. So if they have been prepping any type of extra quarterback run, then maybe we see some more of those planned runs in this game, because you got to let it all hang out here. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but if I were, if I had to make a guess on what are we going to see that's new that was saved just for the Buckeyes, I would say it would be more Bryce Underwood planned running plays.
Now, one of the questions we have is Max Bredesen got dinged up. So Max Bredesen, they brought him out during availability, okay? Now, it is extremely unusual for them to bring out a player who's injured, okay? I can think back to, they let us talk to Will Johnson a few times, okay? And even that was weird, right? But, he was such a high-profile player that they would bring him out. And I remember one of the last times they brought him out, 2 seasons ago, you could look at him, and I just knew he wasn't coming back, okay? He just kind of had kind of a faraway, almost sad look in his eyes as he was talking. And I remember being surprised. I'm like, what are you bringing him out? And I'm like, well, they're bringing him out because they want you to know that he possibly could come back, right? So Max Bredesen comes out in availability, and he's on one of those little knee scooters, okay? And, of course, everybody, asks him, and he's like, well, and to hear him talk about the game.
It's the game. It's a perfect game. That's why you come to Michigan. Everything about it, it's perfect. Try and explain it, but you just can't. So whatever it takes, you gotta find a way.
If this was any other opponent, would you still be trying to play? Or
I love this place too much to not try. But any game, this place, anytime to put on the wing helmet, I'd do it. It'd be awesome. I mean, everything. It's that'd be the greatest honor. 5-0, be undefeated, and that's what you want to leave here with. It's a legacy. It's a legacy game. So being able to leave a legacy like that would be pretty special.
It's just one of those things. You look at somebody who has been such an integral part, a gutty part, a glue guy to the program, okay? And I think Max is going to go, okay? He may be out there on one leg, but I like Max Bredesen on one leg better than a lot of guys. And especially with how they were using him in different aspects in the game versus Maryland. And, the other thing that we know about Michigan offense the last several seasons under Sharon Moore, we know they're going to have some trick plays, okay? We know we're going to see some wrinkles, and I wouldn't be surprised if Max was part of it. And again, we're totally just spitballing here, right? Just totally guessing. But when you look at what this team brings, okay? So, next thing, okay? So we didn't see Jordan Marshall, okay? We were able to talk to Jordan Marshall this week.
I like to hit people, so it doesn't hot, snow, whatever the weather is. That's what I'm going to do. And again, I'm excited to play in a snow game. I haven't played in a snow game since I was probably in elementary, grade school. But just the opportunity, where would you rather be on this Saturday? You get to play in the big house, 30 degrees, some snow, against one of the best teams in college football, against another powerhouse school, best team in college football. And again, just all the work that I put in to be in this position and be able to go run the ball and play against Ohio State. That's what I'm excited for, is, again, this opportunity. A lot of people don't get it, and you get to play in the best rivalry in sports. To go against Ohio State, where I'm from, and again, you don't, like I said, you don't get many opportunities like this. And for me, it's how do I make the most of it? You never know what tomorrow holds. You never know what the next day holds. You never know what Saturday holds. But I know each day this week I'm going to go out there and prepare like I'm playing Ohio State, even at practice, and just putting my best foot forward every single day because, again, this game, for me, being an Ohio kid, it just means more.
Pretty sure we're going to see him. So, what are your thoughts on the game heading in, like your expectations and what you're looking for? And, is there anything special that we can look for from the defense?
Yeah, so defensively, if we start, let's start there. Michigan in the last 5 years, the 4-game winning streak here, starting with McDonald and then Jesse Minter for sure, and now the second year under Wink, they are going to keep their safeties deep over the top of the best wide receivers. They are going to do the best that they can to take the best wide receiver available for Ohio State out of the game the best that they can, right? So that's Jeremiah Smith. That's number 4. They're going to roll coverage to Jeremiah Smith. Now, he has not played the last couple games for Ohio State. So just as Michigan is dealing with some injury concerns, I think Ohio State is as well. Best I can tell, I expect Jeremiah Smith to play, but they might not have Carnell Tate, their number 2, who's also a ridiculously good, likely first or second round NFL pick wide receiver. So they may be a little bit thinner out at the receiving core, but that's what Michigan is going to do defensively in different ways. They are going to do their best to keep him double teamed. And if they're throwing the ball to Jeremiah Smith, it's going to be close to the line of scrimmage. With that said, Michigan is going to have to try to get pressure on the quarterback, on Julian Sayin, with the defensive front. In the past 4 or 5 years, it's been Michigan's calling card that they were able to do that. Hutchinson, of course, absolutely dominated this game in 2021 and launched himself to New York in the Heisman conversation because of how he was able to dominate the 2021 game. In 2022, Michigan did not have Mike Morris for that game, their best defensive lineman. They were not able to get pressure, and their defense suffered because of it. Now, they held on, and Donovan Edwards really was the lightning in the bottle with the 2 long touchdowns. But defensively, they weren't quite as good in 2022, and it was because they could not get pressure with that front. 2023, Ohio State ran the ball a little bit better, but Michigan's front, with Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, still those guys that front that Michigan followed to the national title, they generated enough pressure to create big plays in big moments. But Ohio State had started to figure it out there, even though Michigan had covered the best receivers and got just enough pressure to hold on there. But that game, it felt like Ohio State may have figured it out. And then in 2024, the chess move by Ryan Day was to really double down on a physical running attack, and they ran the ball straight into the teeth of the 2 best defensive tackles in the country. So they had to do that because of Michigan's coverage and their ability to take Jeremiah Smith out of the game over the top. And instead of just throwing the ball to him short and hoping he could make a play, they tried to establish some physical dominance because they thought they had a season where they were the dominant team. And I think Ryan Day wanted to exercise some demons. So going into this game, the question will be, will Ohio State adapt their passing game to how Michigan is going to cover them? They're going to change looks. It's not going to be a 2018 Don Brown, here it is, beat us kind of thing. There's going to be a lot of deception. But if Ohio State is willing to throw the ball short, then that'll be open. They'll be able to throw it to those guys short, and then Michigan will have to try to come up and make the tackles. If Ohio State's not patient enough to do that, and they want to try to get back to a running game and establish the run against Michigan just the way that the Wolverines want to, then that would be a similar mistake to last year. If Ohio State is trying to lead with the running game instead of the passing game, they are going to put themselves right into the same hot box that they were in last year, and it's going to be close late. So they kind of control that. We'll see how they decide to call plays. But Michigan is going to do whatever they can to stop Jeremiah Smith from beating them over the top and force Julian Sagan to sit there and read those underneath coverages and try to create turnovers. So we'll see how that works. I think Michigan has shown they can execute it in different ways. They've confused a lot of good Ohio State quarterbacks in big spots. And I expect to see the same strategy, and it's going to be, what chess move is Ohio State really going to come back with? If they decide to go back to the running game, then I think that's what Wolverine fans are hoping for the most. If Ohio State's running the ball 2-3 times in a row, then we should be celebrating that, and Michigan's got a chance to win a close one.
Well, we also need to address the weather. The forecast has been bouncing all over the place all week. About a week out, it was just supposed to be cold. And then the closer we get to the game, the forecast has been shifting to right now, it appears that we can look to second half snow. So I wonder how that's going to impact both game plans for both teams. It's always the joke from the Michigan side that Ohio State players don't like the snow, and that was one of the excuses they had when the rivalry shifted, 4 games ago, that the weather was just too bad for them. And much has been made about where some of Ohio State's skills players were recruited from. We know that Bryce is a Michigan boy. He understands what weather's like here, and he understands the rivalry. So the question that I have is, and I think this is more of a psychological question for you, Clint. Sharon's had a lot of questions about the rivalry.
It's as intense as a rivalry you'll see in sports. So I don't think the outcome, regardless win or lose, is not going to change it. It's a new year every year. It's a new game. So I don't think that's going to change the intensity.
How do you guys channel that intent? It seems like intensity fits your play style. How does intensity fit the way you guys play?
Just the way this place is built, what Michigan is all about, the intensity, the intentionality of how we practice, how we prepare. That's what we want. We want it like that. We want that physical battle. We want the toughness. We want the violence. That's what we want. So it fits us, but they're playing really well. They're playing physical as well. So we've got to match it, and they've got to match us.
Why they've been successful in previous games.
Again, the players, the game plans are great, but we always talk about the how, not the what, and the players have just executed, and their will to break is, they're unbreakable, especially in that game. They want to be unbreakable. They want to do everything they can to go win that game. So, but again, this is a new game, new year, so we've got to reset the clock and try to do that again.
And about how Michigan just looks to this game.
I think that's something you talk about, something guys know, they acknowledge, they understand the importance of this game, that it's different than last year. You're playing for something big, and that's what you want. We always talked about they remember November, and to be able to play for that, play for a spot possibly in the playoff, and even in the Big Ten championship, like all those things are at hands, and our kids deserve to know that they're in that position, and we'll talk about it, but at the end of the day, we still got to go prepare.
And then also, your performance obviously in these rivalry games, these big games. What is it about you that allows you to kind of meet the moment, I guess?
It ain't me. It's the kids, man. Like I'm not out there playing. I love it. I love doing this. I love being a part of this team, and we work tirelessly as a staff to go win these games. But it's not me. It's those kids that step out on the field.
So we talk about game plans and we talk about weather, but Clint, my question is, last season, Ohio State had just an amazing debacle in Columbus, right? I was there. It was glorious. You know, Michigan won 13-10. It was a brutally cold day, one of the coldest days that I can remember being down on the field, both before the game and in the fourth quarter. And again, Ohio State just the roof fell in, right? And yet they went on to win the national championship. So the question I have is, does that experience make it easier for them to perform in this game because they know losing to Michigan isn't the end of the world? Or does it put even more pressure because, on this podcast and across the nation, okay, many college football fans said about the alleged national championship last year that, if you're going to be the man, you got to beat the man. And they didn't beat Michigan. Okay, they didn't beat the previous national champion. So from a psychological standpoint, where does that put them right now? And I know we're just guessing, but what do you think?
Psychologically, I think if I was as close to 100% sure that Ryan Day was going to get fired after that game 13-10 last year in Columbus. Now, I thought it was funny that they couldn't fire Ryan Day immediately after that game because they had to prep for a playoff game. Because of the 12-team expansion, Ohio State was still going to be in a playoff game, a game that mattered, and they were going to host Tennessee coming up to Columbus. And it would be malpractice to fold up shop because you lost to your rival and then the playoff game doesn't matter. So I expected them to be deflated and play poorly. And to their credit, they bounced back and skyrocketed, played almost perfect football through the playoffs last year on their way to the national title. They absolutely earned that national title coming from the 8 seed and just dominating each game in different ways. I was shocked that they were able to turn that around from the last week of November loss to Michigan to that first playoff game. So psychologically, they have shown that they can make an adjustment. Something that was critical definitely changed between the Michigan loss and their run in the playoffs. I don't know if that adjustment applies to the game against Michigan. That's why I said it's really in Ryan Day's court. How is he going to adjust? And when this game is close in the second and third quarter, and he has his first big decision to make, or if he has to adjust styles and scheme because of the weather, whatever it is, how is he going to handle that as opposed to feeling like he hit rock bottom in the loss last year and there was nothing for him to lose? He was coaching for his career, because if they had lost to Tennessee, I believe 100% he was getting fired, despite all of the positive history that he's got for that for their program. If he lost after losing to the Michigan game, if they had lost to Tennessee in the shoe, he'd have been fired. So he did a great job coaching for his life in those last 4 games, but I still wonder if there was a change in how he's going to approach this particular game. And really that comes down to being risk averse or not. Does he believe that they're going to be able to make the big plays in the big moments, or is he going to turtle in those big moments? That is, yet to be seen. So we'll see. I have to give both him and the staff, the players from last year for sure, a lot of credit for turning it around. One of the more impressive things that I've ever seen a football team do, in all honesty. But I don't know if that adjustment and that change is the same adjustment that is necessary to break the streak against Michigan, and we'll find out.
Clint, I was there. It was glorious. Okay. And I would recommend people go back and listen to our podcast pregame last year, heading up into it. I had a great feeling that Michigan was going to win. It's the reason I went down there. There were very few Michigan fans there, not because I don't think Michigan fans believed, but I think so many Ohio State fans were dead certain that it was going to be just a butt kicking, that they didn't sell their tickets. Okay. And I will tell you, having been down to the shoe many times, looking around, I couldn't believe how red it was. There's usually a spattering of Michigan fans. It was pretty lean last year, right? So imagine in the fourth quarter, late, it was quiet as a tomb, okay? I was talking to another Michigan person in the end zone, and I honestly felt like I needed to quiet my voice a little bit because it was so quiet. It was carrying. I mean, it was crazy, right? So then we had the melee on the field after, and the remaining Ohio State fans were vehemently booing Ryan Day, okay? And there are recordings, there are videos. I have no doubt that if it was up to some of the boosters, he would have been fired. You know, I was wondering if he was going to be fired before the press conference or after, okay? And had a very enjoyable ride back to Ann Arbor listening to Columbus Sports Talk, and went to eat in Columbus right after the game. Had a great time. Left a $13.10 tip for our server. And just the people, the sports fans in the restaurant, I mean, you could overhear them ready to just go ballistic, right? And then, like you said, I give credit to the players, okay? The players are the ones who had to play just the way, you know, we had that quote from Sharon saying it's all about the players, right? So I give credit to the Ohio State players, okay? They got up off the mat and they had a run, okay? And the other thing I wonder is, having lived through the John Cooper years, I wonder if you had the expansion of the playoffs then, if some of those Ohio State teams possibly could have got up off the mat, right? But, you know, that's just a random thought that I had because, you know, Michigan just had an incredible run of beating down highly ranked Buckeye teams during the greatly, fondly departed John Cooper era, right? So, again, Ohio State came back, and I will tell you, okay, I've said this last year and the year before, that there is a bit that flips when Ohio State plays Michigan. And everyone wants to talk about how bitter and intense this rivalry is, right? And Marlon Klein had this great quote.
We're trying to dictate how the game goes every single Saturday. You know, it's fast, physical, and violent. And that's the same thing we're going to try and do on Saturday.
How do you think the intensity behind this rivalry fits that fast, physical style you guys play?
Perfectly, yeah. I think that's what describes this rivalry, and you know, I mean, I think those are the three reasons why this rivalry is the kind of game it is.
But Clint, there's one thing that we have seen, okay? This rivalry flips back and forth, okay? It doesn't go 1 year. It doesn't go 1 year to one team, 1 year to the next team. It overwhelmingly in the last 30 or 40 years goes one team dominates, the other team dominates, then the other team dominates. And I feel that Michigan is in a phase of domination right now, okay? It doesn't mean, it doesn't last forever, okay? And, it's funny because Jordan Marshall had this great quote.
For us, I think we're so focused on just us, right? Like, just this game. And when we take care of business, everything else will sort itself out. And like I said, God has a plan for us, and we're going to go out there on Saturday, prepare like it's our last game, and give everything we got. That's what Michigan wants us to do. That's what our coaches want us to do, and we're going to do that for the state of Michigan. Is go out there like this is our last one, play our hearts out, play with everything we got for 60 minutes, and dominate.
I've been around a lot of football teams, Clint, and I was down on the field for almost 2 hours before the game last year. And Michigan just had a chip, and Ohio State didn't. And I remember I was leaving the field surrounded by some, and I want to be crystal clear here. I go down there. I had a great time. Everybody treated me great. You hear the horror stories about Michigan fans being mistreated. Okay. I say, listen, I don't go looking for trouble. I don't find trouble. This rivalry is great on both sides. Okay. I'm going to say this, Clint. I love Ohio State. I love beating them. Okay. If I didn't love beating them so much, it wouldn't be so great when we won. Okay. If you're beating down a poor team, that's not great. Okay. It's great to beat Ohio State because it matters so much to both sides. Okay. And when you talk to opposing fans, you share that. Okay. They love beating us. We love beating them. It's something we share. So I'm leaving the field with a number of Ohio State lettermen, okay, who were down on the field holding the banner. And they just said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I was heading up to the press box, and I always wear Michigan colors wherever I go." And they just kind of, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I go, "Well, I'm here for the game." And, you try to be polite. And the one of the guys looks at me and says, "Yeah, you guys have a look this year." And I'm like, I'm like, "Yeah, okay." I had to acknowledge it, right? And I believe with every fiber of my being that Michigan will win and continue winning. And I will believe it until time expires and the scoreboard tells me otherwise. Okay. So you look at talking to the Michigan players, and it's not a cockiness, it's a confidence. Okay. They've been underdogs before, right? And Gio Al-Hadi said this.
We're always underdogs, no matter what our record has been or how good of a team we've had. So, but when these type of games, no matter if we're 0-11, we know how important this game is. Just that sibling fight, like I was telling you about, you just want to win it so bad.
I love that no matter what, the Michigan attitude is everybody thinks Ohio State, but we know we're Michigan, okay? And it's interesting. They asked Marlon Klein about what it was like winning down there.
It was sweet winning down there last year, but it's going to be even better here, in front of our fans and our student section, our band, and just in Ann Arbor. I mean, it was the best place on earth, and getting that win against that team at home will be huge. So, just super excited for the opportunity.
And what it would be like winning at home.
That's what this game means to me. It means everything to me. If you ask me what the greatest day of my life was, it was last year. Going down there and beating them in their place. It was the best day of my life so far, and just trying to repeat that this year.
Would this trump that, given what you guys would think it gets to go on to do?
What's that?
Would this trump that?
Yeah. My senior day, them coming to our house in front of our fans, student section, band, it'll be the best day of my life. So just looking forward to Saturday.
So I look at this and you say this about rivalry games, you throw the stats out, okay? You and I crunch stats, and it's what we do, okay? We love Michigan. We love digesting the stats and analyzing them. And it seems to me, and I remember saying this last year, it's like, for some reason, in the last 4 years, all the cosmic tumblers come together for Michigan in this game. And that's how I feel heading into it. And, I know it doesn't make sense. It's not intellectual. Okay. It's why this game is so great. Okay. It's, I mean, as a fan, right? You sit here and on one hand, you got, Jordan Marshall making it very clear he was going to play, right? And then, he says, listen, as an Ohio gay, and this will be the quote where he goes, as an Ohio kid, this game means more, right? And he's very aware that there's a history of players from Ohio coming to Michigan and dominating in this game.
I'm very aware. Dez, you got Woodson, they all made big plays. And for me, it's how do I put myself in that mode or that spot to be with those great players. And for me, all week, like what's popped into my head since Sunday is legacy. How do this is a game to stamp my legacy. This is a game to put my team within legacy. And for me, it's how am I preparing every single day to help my team and prepare my team and even myself to become part of that legacy. And again, I just want to make sure that I'm dotting my X's and O's and making sure that I have everything that I can do prepared for Saturday.
So it's great to see. I know there's a lot on the Ohio State side. They would like nothing better. Okay. And I'll say this again. They've said this for the last 4 years. They would like nothing better than to come in and beat us by 3 or 4 touchdowns, right? I mean, there's that great quote from Ryan Day where he said, we're going to hang 100 on Michigan. Well, they haven't reached 100 points yet. That total's still climbing. And there's nothing better that would exercise demons from Ohio State than to come up here and just put a whooping on. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I can't dispute anything that you're saying, for sure. All of the unwritten, unmeasurable aspects of football as a sport, college football as a specific kind of game, the culture around the rivalry, these two teams, these programs, these coaches, all of the stuff all the dynamics of that are still in favor of Michigan right now, including, again, the weather, including, this is going to be a tough game to play in for the players because of the weather. A little bit of wind, makes the passing game harder. I think, obviously, the cold weather. Michigan and Ohio are both, capable of practicing in those adverse conditions. But when we get to November and December, Ohio State consistently talks about trying to move these big games and championship games to domed stadiums and indoor facilities. And, they've embraced or accepted as a program that they don't like playing these outdoor games. Like they have kind of an SEC mindset with the weather that they live in. It's strange to me. So I cannot argue with all of that. I'm grateful for sure that all of that is pointing in the Wolverines' direction. I'm hoping for a game that looks like 2021, that Michigan's run game dominates and the defense makes the big plays that they need to kind of keep the cap on the Buckeyes. Now, in 21, they gave up 458 yards to Ohio State, but Ohio State could only turn that into 27 points. Michigan only had 20 more yards than the Buckeyes, but beat them by 15 because they scored 6 out of 7 touchdowns when they got to the red zone. So I just I hope that it looks like that. I think that it could now that the offensive line has turned it around. But this defense for Ohio State is way, way tougher than that 2021 defense. I think this game, if I were to pick one in the history that we're kind of looking for in terms of game profile, I'd probably go back to 2012 when Denard Robinson was a senior but wasn't playing quarterback when Devin Gardner was playing quarterback. because Denard had gotten the elbow injury earlier in the season and had returned, but was in more of a running back, wide receiver role. That's kind of the game that I'm looking for. That Buckeyes team ended up 12-0, couldn't go to the postseason because of their Jim Tressel era NCAA violation stuff.
Clint, you can say it, criminality. It's okay.
I still think the NCAA is way worse than any Buckeye. So I'm not taking the NCAA's side.
No arguments there. But I will never pass up taking a shot at the Buckeyes. So
right. I mean, the Buckeyes can hug the NCAA all they want from 2023, but that's a different problem. Anyway, I think it looks more like that game. I think it's going to be very, very close, nip and tuck, and whichever team can make the more critical plays, probably just after halftime. I think it's going to be within a point or two, at halftime, maybe tied, and it's going to be really pivotal who can come out of the locker room in the third quarter and establish themselves right there, right? So it's kind of like a boxing match, feeling each other out at the beginning. And really, I think those first two drives, one for each team, or maybe 4 drives, 2 for each team. But the third quarter, I think, is really what's going to decide this game. And I'm really locked into seeing how the teams come out of the locker room at that point. Right now, Michigan's inexperience in this game is really where I see it falling short. We've seen lesser Michigan teams take down better Ohio State teams, so I expect a close game and pretty much a coin flip outcome, but I have a harder time just riding with the vibes over the analysis, and everything that I see says that Ohio State wins a close one here. And I think my official prediction will be 24-20 Ohio State.
So, Clint, and to be serious here, look what we've seen. So, okay, let's self-scout Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, a month ago, I think it's very easy to game plan how to defend Michigan, okay? You basically, you load up on the run, and you run the clock out, and I believe that if I were to lose my soul and I was, on the Ohio State staff and I was game planning for Michigan, I would say, you know what, we're not going to give up the 60 and 70 yard runs that lesser teams have. So we're going to load up and just block the run, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to dare you to pass. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was a month ago. Okay. So imagine you're the person or the people on the staff at Ohio State who are watching Michigan over the last month, and you see their third string running back get 100 yards. You see the offensive line come into its own. You see a number of freshmen on both sides of the ball, just basically coming on, okay? You see Marsh emerging, right? So if you try not to overthink it, right? Because that's what coaches do. But what you had to plan for a month ago and what you have to plan for now is drastically different, okay? You have a balanced Michigan attack that Michigan can now choose to do. They're not dependent on one or the other. You have an offensive line that is, a month or two ago when they announced that Michigan's offensive line was in the running for the Offensive Line Award, I laughed. Okay. I literally am like, who are they watching? Right. And now it's legitimate. Okay. So I literally sit and say, I don't want to game plan against the Michigan offense right now. Okay. So that gives me hope. Okay. The Michigan defense, as we've said, not as good as last year. Okay. And again, I think last year's defensive line was so good that we expected a little bit of a drop off. I think the drop off's been a little bigger, okay? But again, other areas have stepped up. So I think if I'm Ohio State, my confidence between a month ago and now is drastically different. Because as you know, we break down quarters, the Michigan team, and I will admit this, okay? We talk about season quarters, okay? And I told people, I'm like, well, we're heading into the fourth quarter of the season. We have 75% of our data. That is a great set of data for us to predict the end. Completely wrong, okay? We have seen the Michigan offense ascend in ways that I did not predict, that I don't think anybody could have expected. Both being able to attack on the ground because of the ascension of the offensive line and the quality that they have in the second and third string running back, right? And Bryce and Marsh becoming friends and showing that they have great synchronicity, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you have McCulley. So I mean this, okay? I know the country's looking at number 1 Ohio State, the juggernaut, okay? And number 15 Michigan with 2 losses. If Michigan wins this game, when Michigan wins this game, and Michigan makes the college football playoffs, they are a very dangerous team right now, okay? I would say that Michigan is one of the most dangerous teams in the country because of how they have come on in the last month. And, of course, part of that is, you know, I'm a Michigan fan. Listen, I don't hide that, okay? But I'm also a pretty harsh critic. If you go back and listen to us on the podcast the last, for most of this season, I was pretty unhappy. I went out to Oklahoma, a game that I think Michigan should have won, could have won, didn't win, okay? I went out to USC. I predicted that Michigan would lose that game primarily because they had so many young players in key positions and, just long road trip, different weather, different time zone, big stage, okay? They lost a lot worse than I thought, okay? But with that said, this is a drastically different team, a dangerous team. I would say an unpredictable team as far as offense. So, I feel that one of the things we do when we watch Michigan is that we kind of self-scout Michigan, okay? Well, we're really good at this, we're really good at that. I don't hide things. Oh, our special teams are bad, We were very critical of the offensive line. Right now, this team is scary good. It has the potential to really cause some problems moving forward, right? And I'm looking forward to them playing Ohio State. I'm looking forward to them beating Ohio State. And I'm looking forward to us being there and enjoying it. And it's just, it's interesting because I think we talk a lot about culture, okay? And the Michigan players talk about culture. And they asked Jordan Marshall, hey, you were recruited by Ohio State. What flipped the bit between you, choosing Michigan? And he says it was the culture.
It's all about culture, and that's what I wanted to be around. I didn't want to be around people that were about themselves, and I truly just believe that. That's why Coach Alfred came here too, is he knew that he wanted to be around better people.
Okay. Now, I saw Jordan. He's doing okay with NIL money, right? I'm sure that played a part of it. But you know what? Ohio State has a lot of money, right? All last year, that was the joke about, that Ohio State was basically an NFL team. And Michigan beat them. And then, Ohio State went on the run. But that was the same team that Michigan beat. So looking forward to it. Again, this is, the best rivalry in sports. I'm glad to be a teeny tiny part of it, to have a great seat to observe it and comment it and talk to the players. And Clint, I'm looking forward to being at the game with you and, talking about what happens, however it goes.
Yeah, I would wrap up with one key number is 24. On the scoreboard, when Michigan has scored 24 points, they have not lost. 3 times they have not gotten to 24 points. 2 losses against Oklahoma and USC, and 21-16 scare fest against Purdue. So I think the first team to 24 in this game is likely the one who wins. And that's why I said I'm really, really zoomed in on that third quarter. Defensively, these are the teams that got to 24. Oklahoma scored 24. Nebraska scored 27, including a Hail Mary that, we won't relive. 31 from USC and nobody else. So that seems to be the tipping point here for this team on both sides of the ball. If Michigan can get to 24 and keep the other team below 24, that seems to be the pathway to success. So when we're in when the third quarter changes to the fourth, I think that's what we're going to be looking at. How close are we to that point on both sides of the ball? And if Michigan can make the plays they need to, absolutely, they will have a chance to win this game. But if I'm trying to put my best projection forward, which is what I try to do, I think that the Buckeyes get there this year.
Well, I'm going to humbly disagree with you. But again, I don't think you're surprised at that. What I hope and what I expect is that we're going to have a tight first half, okay? The teams are going to go into the tunnel, and while the Michigan band is doing their halftime show, the skies just open up with flurries, and Ohio State is greeted by that as they return to the field. And, to be, serious, more analytical, the number that I see is that if Ohio State scores 30, they win. Okay, and I just have a feeling that if the Michigan defense cannot hold them under 30, and or if the Michigan offense does something similar to Northwestern, which was very scary, right, with the 5 turnovers, that's really the key, I think. One of the things that Sharon praised Bryce for early in the season as he was gaining experience was his ability to control the football, basically, not to turn the ball over, to be good about that. And I think that in this game, that if somehow the offense, a combination of offense turnovers and or defensive lapses allow Ohio State to get in the 30s, that the Michigan offense might struggle a little bit. Because, again, what we've seen all season long is the defense, as you said, to hold the opponents down and the Michigan offense to be just good enough. And I think, we've seen 2 outliers. We saw the game versus Central and the game versus Maryland. And let's be honest that, there's nothing about Ohio State that they have in common with those 2 teams, other than that they play on a gridiron and they play with a football. So I would not expect the Michigan offense to light it up. And honestly, I don't expect Ohio State to light it up either. They talk about that the running game is the difference in this matchup. I think Michigan is going to try to rely on that. I think Ohio State is going to try to do that. And, as much as I think Ohio State is soft for not liking to play in bad weather, it would be a mistake to, suddenly try to light up the game with the passing attack with the weather forecast, right? Now, it will be interesting if the forecast holds the way it currently does, if they try to maybe do that in the first half and then turtle in the second half. But we'll see. Now, conversely, with Michigan being so successful in short passing or medium passing with Bryce lately, that bodes well for them. So again, I said it before, until time expires and somehow, and it'll happen eventually, hopefully 20 or 30 years from now, that Ohio State triumphs as if they're winning on the scoreboard and time expires. When that happens, I'll believe it. We're in one of those phases of the rivalry, and understand we've been on the wrong side of it too. Okay, I want to be clear. You know, we had the Cooper years where Michigan just pulled it out all the time, and then you had the Trussell years where, you know, amazingly, whatever Ohio State did, they were very successful. The rivalry seems to flip like that. I believe, and again, you know, we had the Rich Rodriguez. You know, one of the worst things that I've ever experienced at a football game is I was down on the field, Rich Rodriguez's last year, and Michigan was going up the tunnel, and I can still hear it in my mind. A female Ohio State fan leaned over and said, "We love you, Rich Rodriguez." And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's how bad it is, right? And, you know, again, I get it, okay? And I think right now, Michigan fans love Ryan Day. So I'm looking for that. You know, we ask what Ryan Day needs to do. He's going to be the guy he is. And the guy he is has not won in this game. And I'm hoping it stays that way.
Yeah, it definitely, it's up to him to figure out whether he's going to be able to turn it around or not. And it would not shock me at all if he looks exactly the same as he has the last 4 years.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
I mean, I just think we're just going to go prepare for the game. I don't know what really outside the building, none of that really matters. What people think, what people say doesn't matter. You know, what matters is how we prepare and how we get ready for this game mentally, and that's it. So I don't know what the mental edge piece. I just know that we're going to just go prepare to go win the game.
Thank you for listening to the umgoblue.com podcast. All rights reserved.